It could happen to anybody.
Accused of a serious crime and facing more than 25 years in prison. What would you do to prove your innocence?
Tonight, ABC 15 investigator Dave Biskuping exposes a police investigation with no physical evidence, no fingerprints, no witnesses, and some questionable tactics by one detective.
Prescott, Arizona. Built around the Yavapai County Courthouse. Outside, memorialized on a plaque, the Kasner family name. And in November 1998, local businessman Tim Kasner was front page news. Kasner grew up in Northern California with brothers Joe and Ron. He came to Prescott in the late 80s, got married, had a daughter, and started a house painting business.
He's painted 800 to 1,000 homes.
But Kasner began losing business. He learned a local detective was telling people he was stealing from his customers.
You think I get it? That bothers me.
You're looking at video of Kasner as he's questioned by Prescott detective Anna Cahall. It was her first case.
Does it bother you because I've caught you?
Kasner was arrested and charged with 17 counts of burglary and 1 count of theft. But did Detective Cahall really catch a serial burglar? Or is Tim Kasner innocent, falsely accused? During trial, Detective Cahall and prosecutor Sheila Polk told the jury Kasner used his painting business as a cover, scouting homes to steal jewelry and then selling it to pawn shops. Any physical evidence in the case?
Define physical. There were no fingerprints.
How about any of the stolen items?
No.
In fact, with a man accused of stealing more than $80,000 in loot, police never served a single search warrant in the entire case. Is that unusual?
Not necessarily.
But Kasner's attorneys say their biggest issue can be seen in these documents.
She went in and actually made changes to the original police reports that were authored by other police officers.
We found in at least 9 cases, Cahall wrote Kasner's name as a suspect into reports filed months and sometimes years earlier by other officers. And in several of those cases, Cahall never spoke with victims or visited the crime scenes before Kasner was arrested.
Her motivation was to make it, to connect the dots, to connect him to everything.
But Cahall found another way to connect Kasner to the crimes. A member of his family who would play the biggest role in his trial.
They're going to give you probation for that.
The prosecution's key witness was this man, Gary Lewis, Tim's uncle. A convicted felon in jail facing drug charges and 15 years behind bars, so he agreed to wear a wire and build a case against his own nephew.
If they'd be willing to cut me a break, I'll testify.
We found Lewis at his home in Northern California. Did Tim ever confess these crimes to you?
No.
Lewis told us he lied and was fed information. Did you lie?
Yeah. Nobody could really prove that he did anything. I was their whole case.
At the end of his 10-day trial, just moments before the jury returned with its verdict, Kasner says he panicked. Why did you run?
That was probably the most scared I've ever been in my whole life.
Kasner spent a year living and working in Las Vegas, contacting attorneys for help. Eventually arrested, he returned to face his sentence. 26 years in prison. Sheila Polk is now the Yavapai County attorney. She stands behind her case and says the appeals court has already heard Kasner's arguments and denied his appeal. Are you convinced he's guilty?
Yes.
Kasner was convicted of 7 burglaries and 1 theft.
No chance for parole. First time offense, no record, no evidence, all circumstantial. It's a death sentence, basically.
Joe and Ron Kasner have spent the last 12 years trying to prove their brother's innocence.
It means everything to Tim that the family hasn't forgotten him.
Tim Kasner spoke to us by phone from the prison in Kingman.
I don't really have a life.
His marriage ended, his daughter grew up.
Let's talk about Tim's daughter. 10 years old.
I'm ashamed of this. This is shameful. I didn't want her to see me in orange. She went from this little girl to this woman.
And how does Kasner feel about his uncle, who has signed an affidavit recanting his testimony? What would you say to him?
I forgive you. That's what I'd say to him.
Yeah, that's Tim.
Detective Anna Cahall did not respond to our interview requests. As for Tim Kasner, right now he's waiting for the U.S. 9th Circuit Court to decide if it will hear his case. If the court denies his request, he will spend another 14 years in prison. I'm investigator Dave Biskuping, ABC 15 News.
Certainly prosecutors can convict somebody on circumstantial evidence, but
Right.
this seems to be a pretty remarkable case.
Yeah, hopefully we'll hear from the detective in some time. The ABC 15 investigators, of course, are digging even deeper into this story.
And tomorrow night at 10, more questions about the prosecution's key witness. We're going to show you the video the jury never got to see.